Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. That is Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast. I am thrilled, as always, to have you with me today. And we have a wonderful adoptive mom guest with us. Looking forward to our conversation. But first, please listen to this message about an important resource that we have for you.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond, invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community.
So if you are a regular listener to this podcast, you know that FASD is not the only topic that we discuss, but I do talk about it a lot. And that's because it applies to so many of our families, even though many might not even realize it. But FASD is a leading cause of developmental and learning disabilities worldwide. Here in the United States, where I am, 1 in 20 school-age children in the United States has been prenatally exposed to alcohol. Those rates are higher than individuals diagnosed with autism. And really, 1 in 20 is a conservative number. It's probably much higher than that. And it certainly is much higher than that among the population of children in adoptive and foster and kinship placements, kids coming into the child welfare system. And it's much more prevalent there, but it's not just there. It's at least one student in every classroom. Most kids are not diagnosed, or I always say they're diagnosed with a whole alphabet soup of other things. Almost always ADHD, ODD, PTSD, ASD, RAD, all of the things, which may or may not be exactly accurate. It is highly likely, especially if we're talking about kids in foster care, kids who've come to us through an adoptive placement, whether it was international adoption, domestic foster care adoption. They have a lot of those diagnoses, and it's likely that they come under the umbrella of what is actually fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So I like to educate on this topic, especially because I am a mom of 5 adopted kiddos. Our youngest 2, ages 19 now and 21, were diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome when they were little. And basically, we were handed a paper about ADHD, even though they got an actual FAS diagnosis. The only thing the developmental pediatrician handed us was a piece of paper about ADHD. So there were no supports back then. Everything I found on the internet was dark and hopeless. So we muddled through, we got, trauma informed and applied a lot of connected parenting techniques, which helped. But if it is truly FASD related, you reach a point to where even, great connection and attachment, not enough. It's like next level. So I got some professional training finally on FASD, and the more I have learned, the more passionate I have become about educating every parent that I talk with, because it's likely that you have a kiddo with an FASD. And we started offering resources like the support group that you just heard about, but also I do parent coaching online. I offer online and in-person workshops. And we have the support group. So lots of resources for you. I write about this, I speak about this. And again, you can tell I'm pretty passionate about it. So want you to know that those resources are available. And if you're just not sure if FASD is something that affects your kiddo, you can always take one of our workshops. Every month I do a free intro to FASD. It's like an hour to 90 minutes, depending on questions. I offer that at least once a month. And I also offer a 3 hour, a little bit longer. We go in a little bit farther, a little bit deeper for the 3 hour. So there's a small registration fee for that. But if you are interested in checking out any of the workshops, just so you can learn a little bit more, you can go to our website, and that is justicefororphansny.org. There is a link in the show notes. And not only will you find out the information about where when and what time the workshops are, but a lot of the other resources. You can sign up for the support group or the parent coaching. All of that is right there. So I hope that you will check it out. I also have a personal blog or a personal website, sandraflach.com. Show notes also have a link to that website where I blog and I write a lot about FASD. So you can check that out there. And if you are going to be in the Chicago area later this week, if you're listening to this podcast on the day that it drops, then you may, it'll be relevant for you to know that October 24th through 26th, I will be at the Replanted Conference in Chicago. I am doing a breakout session on FASD there. And Replanted is an amazing conference that offers support and connection for foster and adoptive parents. I highly recommend it. They do it every year. And if you're going to be there, find me. I would love to meet you. So, of course, as always, please subscribe, follow, leave a review, whether you're, whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, or if you are watching via YouTube. Justice for Orphans has a YouTube channel, so all of the video versions of this podcast are posted there. So if you want to tune in and see what my hair looks like on any given day, you never know what you're going to get. So looking kind of curly today. So you can check us out on YouTube as well. So now, all the preliminaries out of the way, I want to introduce you to our guest, Francine Apy. She is the founder of Soul Filling LLC. Francine is dedicated to encouraging adoption conversations in casual conversational ways at home, at school, and in our communities, and spreading a message of faith, hope, and encouragement. As a mother blessed with 3 adopted kiddos and an aunt to 5 adopted nieces and nephews, Francine is an advocate. She harnesses the power of resilience and the science behind positive psychology to support and elevate the adoption community, whether through her writing, coaching, speaking engagements, educational courses, podcast engagements, or her line of adoption-themed gifts and apparel. Really nice stuff. You can check it out on her website. Francine's commitment to fostering understanding and openness around adoption is unwavering, and I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with her today. Please welcome to the show, Francine Apy. Francine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you because I sort of I heard you on a local news station. So I didn't just hear you, I saw you because you were on TV news. And I thought, gosh, how have I not connected with Francine already? We live in the capital region and we should know each other. We have a heart for adoption. So I'm excited that you are here today. But for our listeners to get to know you, I like to start with, the adoption story. So would you share, because you and your husband have 3 adopted sons, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
share with us what led you to adopt.
Sure. So honestly, adoption has always been on my heart for as long as I can remember. And being a mom was something that I always looked forward to being. And long story short is we've been married 31 years. And so our kids are now getting older, 23, 20, and almost 18. And quite honestly, we tried the infertility route, and while going through that process, I knew what my limitations were in terms of how long I would try that for. And at the same time, we were in the process of completing our profile and started the adoption process. So all of our children are private adoptions, and I am a very big person of faith, and I cannot explain how blessed we were, how quickly our adoptions happened. I began my adoption process around the fall, and was notified in November that we were chosen, and our son was born in December. So that was our first son, and shortly after that, about 2 years later, I said we'd love to adopt again. And what I did, I mean, again, this is 20, almost 25 years ago. So we put together our profile, and basically I sent to my entire Christmas card list and everyone I knew through work and family and friends. I wanted everyone to know we were hoping to adopt. And I sent my profile far and wide to doctors' offices, to school nurses, to different, therapist offices. I wanted, to hospitals. I wanted different social workers and anyone that would potentially come in contact with a prospective birth mother to know that we were excited and ready to be parents. And so we did that a second time, and we got notification, actually from a birth grandmother through a private phone number that we had. And we were chosen to be the parents for our second son. And then our third son, we actually weren't looking to adopt again. And I call it, many of our friends, while we were raising our children and just in that age of wanting to start a family, would be like, we weren't even trying to get pregnant and we're pregnant again, or, and so for me, as a woman who can't bear children, I call this, I woke up pregnant as an adopted mom. And I learned of this child that was going to be born, and that a birth mother that was interested in exploring adoption, and learned about my husband and I, and we met, and lo and behold, she chose us to be the parents of her son. So at the end of the day, it was just this beautiful process that I'll never fully understand of how it went as smoothly as it did, other than knowing, there was an intervention, and God's hand was there all
Yeah.
along.
So they all came home as babies then.
Yes, I was in the
Wow.
delivery room actually for all 3. I cut the cord for all
Wow.
3. So my son's birth mothers will be forever my angels, and
Yeah.
so gracious. Yeah.
Yeah. Are any of them open adoptions, or you said private in the beginning?
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
private. So we
Yeah.
always understood, just to back up a bit. So I'm the youngest of 4 girls. 3 of us have been unable to have children. So there's 11 grandchildren, 8 of which are adopted. So adoption has been in our family for over 30 years. So I share that with you from the standpoint of just trying to understand, again, this is almost 25 years ago, that open adoption was not as commonplace, if
Right.
you will, as today. But it was considered, so what the arrangement that we had made with the birth mothers is we would send pictures and letters twice a year through the attorney. And sometimes they responded, back to us, and we just continued this dialogue. until our adoption attorney was retiring, and they said, would you like to connect with your birth mothers? So we were able to do that with two of them, and two of our children were interested in connecting with their birth moms, and they have since met. So they have that relationship and ongoing today.
Wow. And that's been a positive in everybody's lives then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that it really has been beautiful.
Aw, we love it. We love it when it turns out like that, you know. So that is awesome. And the other thing that can happen, it's very common because even children who come to us and join our families, as like you get to cut the cord, there's still some, there's loss and there's still a trauma there. So in adoption, the symptoms of that are often behavioral. So what was the journey like as your boys were growing up? Were there those challenging behaviors that we know are part of, attachment and trauma? What was your experience with that?
Sandra, as we were raising our children, my husband and I were both so sensitive to the fact of bringing up the topic of adoption as often as possible without like being overbearing with it. But constantly bringing it up from the minute they were born, they knew that they were adopted. And then as they got older, you better define what that means. And we always spoke very highly of our sons' birth families, of very much we are people of faith. So that whole reason for us being together was the way it was supposed to be, and that decisions were made that they had nothing to do with, right? That they had nothing to do with, that adults made decisions that needed to be made on their behalf. So I'll never know 100%, like when one of our kids had a little bump here or there, if that was adoption related, quite honestly, if I'm speaking the truth with you, or if it's just regular growing up in being a teenager or being an adolescent and going through the things that they need to go through. I consistently try to find, and again, I think it's different today, but I consistently I'm a believer in therapists. I'm a believer in talking to somebody if something's on your heart or your mind that you can't find resolution for. And it was a bit of a struggle for us to find a therapist that was really versed in adoption, and it was a lot of reading that I did on my own, but it wasn't until later on that people, at least in my adoption experience, were talking more about this trauma related to the adoption and the detachment and attachment and what have you. So all I can say is I brought these topics up to our children over the years and just kind of put it out there and said, you may not feel this today, but it may be something you feel in the future. And if you do, be good to yourself, right? Be gentle with yourself, explore that. Don't push it down. Don't push it away. And so, my prayer, my hope is that they're at peace, and that if there is a piece that they're still struggling with, maybe it hasn't come up yet, but when that does arise, maybe when they have children, or maybe at another time when they least expect it. But for right now, from what we've experienced, they just seem really well adapted. And in their heart, I just believe that their story is the way it was supposed to unfold,
Yeah.
right, wrong, or otherwise.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And your youngest is 18. And
Soon to
so
be 18, yeah.
yeah. So how old is everybody now? And just kind of tell us, what are they doing? What are they passionate about? What are their interests?
Sure, they're all quite different. I'm the youngest of four girls, and our core is the same, but we all couldn't be more different. So our sons are their core, I think, is very similar, but they're very different. So our oldest graduated from college this last May, and he is living and working within his field. He's passionate about marketing. He's passionate about photography, videography. He has a YouTube channel. And he's very engaging and very just full of life and passionate about the work that he's doing, and really being now a fully graduated, student of college and beginning kind of his adult phase, if you will.
Yeah.
Our middle son is a junior in college. He is also a marketing major and a minor in entrepreneurism. He's passionate about music, and particularly music production and creating more of the technology type music. So he doesn't per se play an instrument, but he's very good at mixing and producing music and very passionate about that. And our youngest son is a senior in high school, and he is very passionate about classical guitar. He plays classical guitar since he was in first grade. We still haven't figured out where this talent has come from, but he has a beautiful ear for music. We call him our old soul. He is just, I don't know if it's birth order or a combination of both, but he's just one of those kids that he's just very comfortable in his own skin. He just loves music and loves what he loves, and is really kind of the go with the flow, as child of the family. And they're all big skiers. We're a very big family that skis, so they all are pretty passionate about that.
Wow. I love how they're all creative and, musical, and I love that.
Yeah. It's interesting how the creative element, has really weaved into all of them. And I think, having the children that you have, the careers, like the careers of the future haven't even been defined yet. And I think their paths right now, this window of these 20 somethings, their jobs are so interesting. I think COVID, that was I think a benefit that came out of COVID was just the power of Zoom and learning and engaging. Like my middle son, in addition to getting a 4-year degree in marketing and entrepreneurism, where he's in person in class, he's also doing a 2-year online music degree as well.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that he was trying to figure out how to be able to do both of what he wanted to do at one school, with the school and meeting the criteria of what he wanted in a school. And I said, buddy, what if you did both? He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, choose your in-person 4-year degree and then do online for the other. And he is absolutely loving it. So
Wow.
just the ability to be able to just be creative that way. I mean, I know when I went to college, it was just much more, the path was more defined. And like
Yeah.
when our parents, my dad went to college, my mom didn't go to college, but their paths were that much more defined. Like you do this, and then you do this, and then you do that, and that. But I think for these kids, it's really this beautiful exploration
Yeah.
about really identifying your passion. What do you love? And how can I make a living potentially doing that?
Yeah. I love that. So exciting. Love that your boys are creative, and as a family you ski. I love those interests. And I know my some of our children, biological, we have a couple, probably our 3 biological kids are all musically talented, except for especially 2 of them actually have recorded music, and they play instruments, and they've performed and all of that. And
Oh, that's awesome.
my husband and I have like 0
Excuse me.
musical ability. And then, we adopted 5 kids, and at least 2 of them are musically inclined as well and can play instruments. And it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know where any of them got it, because they didn't get it from us. Like, I can play the radio, maybe. So, but
That's
they,
cute.
I love how God just gifts our kids with, various different talents and skills and abilities, and they can blossom in that. And I love that. So thanks for the update on your kiddos. I
Sure.
want to talk now about Soul Filling,
Mhm.
which is your LLC. So what led you to start this adoption focused business?
Sure. So my background is in HR leadership. So for 25 years, I just loved, working within that field of coaching and performance management, and, helping people really thrive within their careers. And it was a space I was really comfortable in. And we had this opportunity to sell our company. And I really took the time to sit with, what do I want to do in this next phase of my life? Like, what, in all honesty, fills my soul? And a dear friend of mine, who actually is adopted. Coincidentally, her birthday's in October. It's the 21st. And it was just a couple years ago. She texted me and I texted her and said, "Happy birthday." And she said, "Thank you, my soul filling friend, Fran." And I said, "Soul filling, what a beautiful word." And I sat with it and really got like, it really moved me. And I was like, what fills my soul? Like at the end of the day, like all the opportunities of my career and of my family and travel and education and experience and my faith. And when I sat with it, it's really my children, right? That is the one thing in my life from as long as I can remember, and I'll probably get a little emotional, that it wasn't an option that I wasn't going to be a mom. It just was not on the table. And so for me, it brought me right back to my son's birth families and their choice of adoption and their sacrifice and their work that they did to help people like myself.
Mm.
And I thought, how can I bring that topic of conversation around adoption in a more balanced way? So, for 30 years, adoption's been in our family, and all of my sisters and I have been very blessed with these incredible birth families that are very just grounded and comfortable with their decisions. And there was, peace in their journey and everyone's story. And not to say there wasn't difficulty and not to say there weren't challenges and not to say, but it never got ugly or mean or uncomfortable from the standpoint of needing to like protect our kids from people that were angry or mad or upset. And then as I began looking into adoption beyond my little bubble, if you will, I identified there's a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions around adoption. There's some people that are very angry within adoption. If their story was 50 plus years ago or 30 plus years ago, Sandra, 40 plus years ago, when there was so much more secrecy in adoption and let's pretend it didn't happen and let's not talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, then it didn't happen. And very centric around adoptive families, how they feel, as opposed to really the children's feelings and needs should be in the forefront. And so for me, I was like, I had to kind of re-educate myself on the history of adoption and why people are feeling this anger that I'm seeing, right? Online and otherwise. So I had to balance that. And then I needed to look at and come to terms that there are a lot of adoptive families that didn't do right by children. And so then you have adoptees that are upset that they were placed and that, so then you have these people that are potentially upset too. And then, of course, then you have the adoptive family. So all three sides of the triangle. And I'm like, how can I bring together more stories of when things are just going well? Because I know they are out there. I know they exist. And wouldn't that help the adoption story and maybe some of the stigmas around adoption to do a better job at documenting and sharing and celebrating when things are going well for birth family, adoptive family, and for child? So in addition to that, I also feel as I was raising my children, there wasn't enough of just like casual conversations around adoption. I say this often, life is serious. Having children is serious. Whether you give birth to your children, you adopt your children. Raising a family is serious, but everything doesn't need to be serious. Every topic we have doesn't need to be serious. And so how can I help make the conversation of adoption more mainstream at home, work, and school? And how can I bring to light more conversations when things are just going well? And providing the tools and some guidance and some hope when things aren't going well and you get stuck on your journey. What are you going to do? right? How can you move through that space of being stuck and out of the space of being angry or bitter or frustrated or feeling that there aren't other options? So I decided to write a children's book. So as I'm in that theme of help make the conversation more mainstream at home, work, and school, and I was identified as the beacon within adoption. I don't know about, but just bring light to the topic of adoption, which can sometimes get heavy. And so I wrote this children's book with the hopes, and it was based on an actual event that happened to one of our sons at school. I named it Brianna's Brave Day at School. I'm channeling my girl energy. Brianna would have been one of my girls' names. So, and it's how he handled when adoption came up in his little classroom in first grade in a negative way, and the confidence he had to put his hand up and share his adoption story and share the decision that his birth mother made for him. And it was an extraordinarily impactful day for me that day at pickup when the teacher called me over and said, I have to share with you what happened in class today. And for a minute, as we do, we're like, oh no, what happened?
Yeah.
And then she told me, and so in addition to that story, I wanted the story to be balanced too. We talk about his birth mother. A lot of books that I read when reading to our children, it was all about, I wished for you, right? In adoption, I prayed for you. And that's all beautiful and that's all true, but you don't hear a lot about what the birth mother is feeling or experiencing in the decision that she had to make. So I wanted to bring in birth mother, and again, the language of adoption, to see the word birth mother, adoptive mom, but they just call me mom kind of thing. And then at the end of the book, I provide a key of just some common adoption language, birth mother, or adoptive mom, that November's National Adoption Month, what the adoption symbol is of the triangle and the heart and why that is. And again, to make the conversation a little bit more casual, that the colors of adoption are yellow, pink, and white, that the lotus flower is the adoption flower, and why is that? And so just bringing together these other topics around adoption to just open the door to have a light conversation. And maybe the conversation will turn into something heavier. But so many times I'll hear people say, I didn't know the lotus flower was adoption flower. I didn't know what that triangle meant. I didn't know. That's really kind of cool. Oh, so you wear white bracelets or something, or white ribbon in November for National Adoption Month? That's interesting. I didn't know that. So bringing those conversations to light that way. And I also commissioned a local jeweler to make my interpretation of the adoption symbol. And I've put it on different products primarily to spark those informal conversations. Like, what's that the symbol of? Oh, that's interesting. And Sandra, 9 times out of 10, and I'm not exaggerating, somebody will say to me, oh, my neighbor was adopted, or my friend is thinking about adoption, or my gosh, I just heard that, a cousin of mine or a niece of mine is in the process of adopting. So it makes those conversations just more casual and easy.
Yeah, I love that. And while you were talking, it popped into my head. I had interviewed a local priest, a number of years ago, and he would often talk about he himself was adopted, and he's a very dynamic personality, Father Scott. And I remember interviewing him and asking him, what was it like growing up knowing that you were adopted? And he said, his mom read him all the stories, and he grew up had a very positive outlook on adoption. And he said, I used to feel sorry for the other kids who weren't adopted. Sorry, my phone is dinging through my computer, guys. He said,
I can't hear it, but
oh, good. I heard it. So I don't know if it'll come through on our recording. He said, I felt sorry for the other kids who weren't adopted. He said, because I was adopted and Jesus was adopted. So Jesus and I have this in common and all the other kids don't. So like, it was just the way he explained it. I'm like, wow, I've never heard anybody, an adoptee be that passionate about that. So I love that. But having those conversations, I love that you're doing that. And so tell us a little bit more. I want to talk about the book, but I also want to talk about, what else? Because you have the book, and we'll make sure that there's a link to your website in the show notes. It's Brave Day at School, correct? It's a
Correct.
children's book.
Brianna's Brave Day
Brianna's
at
Brave Day at
School.
School.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. And then what about, I don't want to, and you can tell me if we should talk about Dominica's story here, or if we should finish talking about what you do through Soul Filling, and then we could talk about that. Where do you think that would fit in? Because I want you to tell a little bit about that story.
Sure, sure. We can talk about, so my mom is Dominica, and I was part of pulling together her memoir, if you will. I didn't actually write it. A dear friend of mine is a professor at Skidmore College, and she's versed in Ukrainian and Russian history. And so our whole life, we wanted to write my mom's story. She was born in Ukraine, and it's just this incredible survivor of war at 5 years old. And we found the person. So she was able to write the story, and then I actually pulled it together, created the cover, did the forward and the epilogue, and self-published it. And that is also available on Amazon, as well as my website. But it's called Dominica's Story, A Life of Courage, Hope, and Love. And so my mom, long story short, at 5 years old, the war broke out. Her and her sister were in the field. They were hit with shrapnel. They were wounded and picked up by German soldiers, put on the train to go for medical care. And as you can imagine, the turmoil that was going on, no one kept track of anyone. And long story short, my mom and her sister were together on their journey of healing and foster care, living in foster care throughout Europe. And they thought their parents and other three sisters were dead, and vice versa. There was no communications. And so, long story short, they were able to come to this country through Catholic Charities. Once my aunt was old enough to be my mom's sponsor and come to this country. And I won't give the rest of the story away. But the beauty of the story is, to meet my mom today, this 85-year-old woman who, did not have the most ideal upbringing, still has her shrapnel wounds in her upper shoulder, where she was wounded, and in the back of her leg. And, she got, most positive personality. I can't think of what the word was, from high school. Like, she just beams this energy of light and of positivity. And, she had every reason in the world to be angry, right? She was taken away from, separated from her mom, and lived in all different foster cares all throughout, but different parts of Europe before they were old enough to come here together. And so it was really an opportunity for us to write her story. And I did it originally. It was put together in 2016. And then when everything happened more recently in Ukraine, as a family, we felt, what better way to give some hope to the Ukrainian people. And so we added a few chapters, brought it up to speed with my parents and life through COVID, and what currently was going on in Ukraine over the last few years. And all the profits or any proceeds from that book are going to the Center for Adoption Support and Education out of Maryland. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were one resource that I used from time to time throughout raising my children. And I love the work that they're doing in not only providing resources for families with adoption and for adoptees and for everyone on the adoption triangle, if you will, but also providing the training tools for therapists to become adoption sensitive and centric and knowledgeable on, as I say, it's another lens you have to look through. So people are going to go through different things throughout their life. And whether you were adopted or not, but if you are adopted, it gives reason to pause and look through that lens of adoption at that time to see if there's anything further. And so I love that CASE does that, the Center for Adoption Support and Education. So we wanted to, in celebration of my mom's journey and what foster care meant for her, to give back to the adoption community with the proceeds from her book.
I love that. And now both books are available where?
On Amazon. So both are on Amazon as well as on my website, soulfillingadoption.com.
And we will put links in the show notes to make sure that to your website, soulfillingadoption.com. And also you offer a course. So you've got books and you do lots of different things. So tell us about the course real quick.
Sure. So as serendipitous things can happen, I was on a flight last fall, and the woman next to me, she oversees the continuous education at SUNY Schenectady. And at the end of the conversation, she gave me her business card and she said, "Would you ever consider teaching a continuous ed course on what you're doing within adoption?" And I said, "Sure." So that course is going to be offered in November, 4 Tuesdays in November in the evening. And it's called Adoption Conversation, History, Insight, and Mindset. So we're basically going to just touch on the history of adoption and how far it's come, and some of the stigmas around it, and why they're there. The power of insight, my insight, and this is my perspective as an adoptive mom on adoption, and kind of how my beliefs have evolved to bring me to where I am today. And what I say in the final piece is mindset, the power of mindset, the power of faith, the power of positive psychology, the power of believing there's a bigger picture going on to help you get through your journey. And so my hope is that it's open to anyone to attend. So if you're a teacher who interfaces with children and the topic of adoption comes up and you just want to be better versed in common adoption language today, or you're someone thinking about adoption, or you're in the middle of raising your family of adoption, or maybe you're, a school counselor and you're seeing more and more kids come through the room, your door with adoption, and you really don't have a lot to go on relative to that. So that's my hope. So the class is online with the hopes that it could extend beyond the capital region, to people wherever they are.
I love that. And how would somebody sign up for the class?
So that you can do that through SUNY Schenectady. If you just go to SUNY Schenectady's website and you put in adoption, it does pop up as a course. You can register there. You can also register on my website too, Soul Filling, SOULFILLING, adoption.com. That's there as well.
Awesome. And like I said, we will put a link to your website in the show notes so our listeners can check out all that you've got on your website, from the books to the course. I know you do a newsletter or a blog as well.
Yeah, so that
Yes.
that newsletter is quarterly. The fall just went out and it's packed with such great information. And I just do that on a quarterly basis. And now
Nice.
I'm just getting ready for National Adoption Month. I've been invited to a birth mother retreat the first Saturday in the Capital Region, which I'm thrilled to
Yeah.
be a part of that. And what I tried to do, Sandra, is just in my circle of where I'm going, just continuously planting seeds of adoption. So like the yoga studio where I go to yoga, they dedicate a class in November to adoption. So that class, when I go into that class, we will mention it's National Adoption Month, and it's just an awareness. I give everyone a small bracelet, which is the colors of adoption, for them to wear. And if they know someone, who has adoption in their story, maybe to give them a call and reach out. So just planting seeds in casual ways is what I'm hoping to just keep the conversation going.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. So most of our listeners are adoptive moms, foster moms. So as we wrap up today, Francine, would you share some words of encouragement to our parents listening?
Sure, sure. The main thing I would say is to continue to read as much as possible about adoption, older books, newer books. And for me, one of the things that I just feel was so important is to not constantly, but if someone gave me this tip on how often should I bring up the topic of a conversation of adoption with my family. And the advice was, if you can't remember the last time you just broached the topic, then maybe it's time to bring it up. And so I always felt, and I can't stress enough, the importance that I do think it's our responsibility as the adoptive family to bring up the topic, to leave the door open, to know, so that they know this is a safe space. This is a place that they can come and share what's on their mind, and to reassure them that if they don't have the answers, if we don't have the answers, that we will do whatever we can to get the answers that they're looking for to the best of our abilities, to know that we're on the same side with this. There's nothing more than we want to see them thrive and to see them be at peace with their story. So keep the door open. It could be as subtle as, oh my goodness, I just saw somebody else that had the same name as your birth mother, and it got me thinking about her. Just something as casual as that, to know that I think it reinforces to them that you're thinking about them in a loving way. And
Yeah.
I think that can speak volumes to them.
Yeah. And everybody's story is so different, and my 4 of my 5 adopted kids were born in Ukraine, like your mom.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And when the first 3 came home in 2007, we had adoption records and things were translated into English and whatnot. So I knew the birth parents' names, I knew birth mom's name, and I knew that she was very young. And my heart just ached for her. And I would pray for her often. I know
Yeah.
life in Ukraine, very difficult. I'd been there a number of times. And all 3 of the kids at that time had come out of an orphanage, but the older 2 had been with the birth parents, for their first several years. So, and then there was a 4th sibling who we went back for in 2010. So, but
Incredible.
by then we found out in the process of doing all the paperwork and everything that we needed to do in country, birth mom had passed. And to me, it was just heartbreaking because I felt like I imagined she lost hope, knowing, because I little bit of what I do know about the story, I believe she knew her kids were adopted out of the orphanage. Parental rights had been terminated, and that they, went to another country. And I think at that point, maybe lost hope. But interestingly enough, in Ukraine, cause of death is not listed on a death certificate. So we have a copy of that because it was part of our dossier, but we don't know what happened to her. So we had to share with our kids, that,
Wow.
your birth mom had passed away. And they all had very different, some were too little to really at the time know, to know. And they know now, but they were too little, but the older kids,
Sure.
and out of all of them, our daughter actually expressed an interest of returning to Ukraine. She was 7 when she came, in 2000. Well, it was probably late January of 2020 that she came to me, and she wanted to go to Ukraine and she wanted to visit and go back to where she knew her orphanage was. And I said, we can do this. I have connections. I know it's no longer an orphanage. It's actually like a nursing home for elderly. But I know people and we can find out things and we can go back. And then we were just beginning to explore that and COVID happened.
COVID happened.
So it got shelved, but then now it's almost like she's moved on, and now she doesn't, and now we couldn't really probably go. We could go, I suppose, but there's a war going on, right? So it wouldn't be the same kind of a trip, but she doesn't, she's kind of not brought it up again now. But out of all of the kids, I have to make borscht for her birthday every year. That's a requirement. So next week, yeah, I'll be making borscht.
My mom doesn't even make that, so yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I have a good recipe, and it comes out really good every year. But she has to have it, so I make it every year for her birthday. And when the war broke out in Ukraine, a couple of years ago, we actually had like a meal in honor of Ukraine. So I made the borscht, and then we made vareniki or pierogi, depending on where.
Pierogi, yeah.
So
my mom does do pierogies.
Yeah,
so she does pigs in the blanket by scratch.
Wow.
Halupki.
Yeah. So and then I have a daughter-in-law who's very Polish. So she actually made some things and brought some of those things, and we just had a meal and prayed for Ukraine. So, it has a special place in our hearts and our family. And every Easter I go to the Ukrainian store in Latham, and, we get the bread, and they all love their sunflower seeds still. So we get the sunflower seeds, and I get some candy, and it's just, just a nod to their heritage. But, not all of them seem to be, one of them is kind of like, doesn't want to even acknowledge it, but we do try to honor, so they're all different, but yeah.
Did you go to the Ukrainian festival this past fall?
I was not able to, but I saw
Oh,
pictures online. Yeah.
it was incredible. When I saw
Yeah.
that it was there, my mom and I got a table and we had no idea. My mom had never been to a Ukrainian festival. We don't know why, but it's just what life gets busy, right?
Yeah.
And we were blown away by
Yeah.
the level of the Ukrainian dancing
Yeah.
and the vendors that were there and the food. And I'm so glad, that we went for my mom's sake, for mine
Yeah.
too. But she met so many people and, it was just great. It was
Yeah.
great.
I'll have to take my daughter next year because I think that
Yeah.
she would love that.
We were impressed. We were really
Yeah.
impressed. My mom walked in. It was like a little girl in Disney World. She's like, what is going on?
These are
'Cause
my
she
people.
speaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, she speaks Ukrainian, and her sister has since passed away. So she doesn't get a lot of opportunities to speak. She can't read and write because she left so early when she was
Yeah.
little, and English
She can speak.
became very
Yeah.
important for her to learn. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could talk all day about all this, you and I, but
yes.
we have to leave it here. But thank you so much, Francine, for all that you are doing on behalf of the adoption community, for being that resource and having those conversations. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and it was great talking with you, Sandra.
Yeah, same here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Francine today. We do have the links in the show notes so that you can get to her website and learn more about the amazing work that she is doing, bringing adoption to the forefront of conversations. And she has beautiful adoption swag on her website if you're interested in that as well. And thank you for listening. I hope you were encouraged and inspired today. Make sure you go to our website, check out our FASD resources if that is something that you feel that you need to access. Make sure you follow us on social media. Justice for Orphans is on both Facebook and Instagram. Me, Sandra Flach, I'm on both of those platforms as well. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. Grateful to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.